What she didn't know was that her call would change everything. The Mafia boss she thought was gone forever was coming back.
The phone trembled in the little girl's hands as she pressed it to her ear, crouched on the cold bathroom floor with the door locked and the light turned off. Her knees were pulled to her chest, her socks soaked from the leaky pipe beneath the sink. But she didn't move. She listened to the ringing, her heart beating louder than it ever had before. "Papa?" she whispered when the line finally clicked. On the other end of the world, in a black SUV slicing through the night street of Milan, Luca Moretti closed his eyes the moment he heard that voice. Traffic lights blurred past the tinted windows. The city smelled of rain and metal and old sins. He hadn't heard her voice in 3 years. Not once. "Sophia," he said, his voice low, careful, like the name itself might shatter. "Why are you calling me?" She swallowed. She had practiced this in her head 100 times, but now her mouth felt dry. Because Mama doesn't know, and because she's doing something bad. Luca straightened in his seat. His men noticed immediately. When the boss went still like that, something was wrong. "What do you mean?" he asked. There was a pause, a soft sniff. Then the words came out in a rush, barely louder than a breath. "She's robbing you." The car slowed without anyone being told to brake. Luca didn't speak for several seconds. His fingers tightened around the phone, the scar across his knuckles whitening. He had been shot at, betrayed, buried friends with blood still warm on their suits. None of that felt like this. "Who is she, Sophia?" he asked gently, though his chest was already tightening with a familiar, dangerous heat. "My mama," the girl said. "Elena." The name landed like a punch. Elena Rossi, the woman he had loved with a foolish, reckless part of himself he thought had died years ago. The woman who had walked away from him while he was bleeding out in a hospital bed, leaving nothing behind but a note and a silence that stretched into years. Luca had told himself she'd disappeared because she was afraid, or because she'd never truly loved him, or because she'd been smarter than him. He had never allowed himself to consider any other reason. "Sophia," he said slowly, choosing each word. "What exactly is your mother doing?" The line crackled. In the background, he heard the faint hum of the refrigerator, the clink of dishes. A normal home. A life he had never been allowed into. "She meets a man every week," Sophia said. "In the afternoons. He brings papers. Mama hides them in the blue folder, the one under her bed." Luca closed his eyes. Business papers. His business. "And why do you think they belong to me?" he asked. "Because they have your name," Sophia whispered. "And the lion seal. The same one on the ring you gave me." Luca, as breath caught, he remembered that ring. He de-slipped it onto Sophia, as tiny finger the day she turned 5, kneeling in front of her like she was royalty. Elena had watched from the doorway, her face unreadable, her hand pressed to her mouth. That was the last day he'd seen them. "Are you safe right now?" Luca asked. "Yes," Sophia said quickly. "Mama is in the kitchen. She thinks I am asleep." "Good," he said. "Listen to me carefully. I need you to stay where you are. Lock the door. If anything feels wrong, you call me again. Do you understand?" "Yes, Papa." The word hit him harder than any bullet ever had. Before he could say more, the line went dead. Luca stared at the phone long after the call ended. "Turn the car around," he said quietly. One of his men hesitated. "Boss, you were scheduled to fly too." "Turn it around," Luca repeated, his voice like ice. "We're going home." The jet was already being prepped on the private runway when the car pulled in. Rain soaked his coat as he stepped out, the cold seeping through the fabric. Milan faded behind him as the engines roared to life, carrying him back toward a city he had sworn never to return to. During the flight, Luca said nothing. He replayed the call again and again. Sophia, as trembling voice. Elena, as name on his papers. The realization that his daughter, his secret, protected daughter, had been living under the same roof as a betrayal. By the time the plane landed, night had swallowed the city whole. Luca did go to his penthouse. He call his lawyers. He alert his rivals. He drove straight to a quiet apartment building on the edge of the old district, where the lights were still on in a second-floor window. Inside, Alina stood at the kitchen counter, counting money with shaking hands, unaware that the past she had tried so hard to outrun was already at her door. Alina froze when the lights in the kitchen flickered. It was barely noticeable, just a brief dimming, like the building itself had taken a nervous breath, but her hand stilled over the neat stack of bills. She waited, listened. The apartment settled back into its familiar sounds. The hum of the fridge, the ticking clock above the doorway, the distant traffic drifting in through the cracked window. She told herself it was nothing. Still, she slid the money into the blue folder and pushed it back under the bed with her foot, careful not to bend the corner. Her heart hadn't stopped racing since that afternoon, since the man with the thin smile and expensive shoes had warned her this was the last delivery. Since he said Luca Moretti was back in Europe, she hadn't believed him. She could afford to. Alina. Sophia's voice floated down the hallway, small and uncertain. In bed, sweetheart, Alina called, forcing warmth into her tone. Late. There was a pause, then the soft click of a door closing. Alina leaned against the counter and closed her eyes. She pressed her palm flat to her chest, willing her breathing to slow. She'd done everything for one reason, and one reason only: to keep Sophia safe. To keep Luca far away from her child and the world that came with him. She had convinced herself that stealing from a monster was not a sin. The knock came 10 minutes later. It was loud. It was aggressive. Just 2 measured taps, confident, patient, like whoever stood on the other side knew she would answer eventually. Alina's blood turned to ice. She did move at first. She stared at the door as if it might disappear if she refused to acknowledge it. Another knock followed, slightly firmer this time. Alina, a man's voice said, calm, familiar in a way that hurt. Open the door. Her knees nearly gave out. She crossed the apartment slowly, each step heavy, her mind screaming at her to run, to grab Sophia and disappear into the night. But she knew better. Running from Luca Moretti had never worked. She opened the door. He stood there alone. No entourage. No visible weapons. Just Luca, taller than she remembered, broader through the shoulders, his dark coat still damp from the rain. His face was harder now, more lines, more shadows, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, watching, seeing too much. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Hello, Alina," he said finally. Her mouth opened, then closed. When she found her voice, it was barely steady. "You shouldn't be here." A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. "That makes 2 of us." His gaze drifted past her shoulder, taking in the narrow hallway, the scuffed floor, the framed drawings on the wall, children's drawings. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Is she asleep?" he asked. Alina's chest burned. "You don't get to ask that." He looked back at her then, really looked. "She called me." The words knocked the air from her lungs. "She's a child," Alina said sharply. "You had no right." "She said you were stealing from me," Luca interrupted, his voice low but controlled. "And she was right." Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. "I was going to stop," Alina said. "After this month. I swear." "Why?" he asked. "Why risk everything?" Her eyes flashed. "Because you disappeared. Because I was left with nothing. Because I had to choose between pride and my daughter's future, and pride did pay rent or school fees." Luca absorbed that without flinching. "You could have come to me. You were bleeding on a hospital bed, surrounded by men with guns," she shot back. "And even if you hadn't, Tibin, what kind of life would that have given her?" His jaw clenched. For the first time, something like pain flickered across his face. "I came back tonight because my daughter was afraid," he said quietly, "and because she trusted me enough to call." Alina's throat tightened. She hated herself for it, but tears stung her eyes. "You don't know her." "I know she has my eyes," Luca said, "and your courage." Before she could respond, a small figure appeared at the end of the hallway. "Papa?" Luca turned slowly. Sophia stood there in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide but shining. The moment she saw him, she broke into a run. He dropped to one knee just in time to catch her as she threw herself into his arms. He held her like she was something fragile and irreplaceable, his eyes closing as if the world had finally gone quiet. Elena watched them, her heart splitting open. This was the moment she had feared, and the moment she had never been able to stop imagining that Luca did. To let go of Sophia right away. He held her longer than necessary, longer than appropriate for a man who'd built his life on control. Her small arms were wrapped around his neck, her cheek pressed into the collar of his coat. She smelled like soap, and crayons, and something achingly familiar. Home, maybe. Or what home could have been. Elena stood frozen by the door, watching the way Luca, as hand moved instinctively to the back of Sophia, as head, shielding, protecting. It was the same gesture he used with his men when bullets flew. Seeing it used on her child made her chest ache. "You scared me," Sophia murmured into his shoulder. "I know," Luca said softly. "I am sorry." Those two words felt heavier than any apology he'd ever given. He sat Sophia down gently. "Why aren't you in bed, Piccola?" She glanced at Elena, uncertainty flickering across her face. "I heard voices." Elena forced herself to move. "Sophia, sweetheart, go back to your room. I'll be there in a minute." Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Before leaving, she reached for Luca, as hand and squeezed it once, quick and secret, like a promise. When she was gone, the apartment felt smaller. Luca straightened slowly. His eyes returned to Elena, darker now, sharper. "We need to talk." She crossed her arms, bracing herself. "Not here." "This is where my daughter lives," he said. "So yes, here." She flinched at the word my. "You, Dawn, get to claim her now," Elena said. "You did to even know where she slept." Luca did to raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I didn't know because you made sure I would, T. I made sure she would be safe. And you think stealing from me made her safe?" Elena laughed bitterly. "You think being your daughter makes her safe?" The question hung between them. Luca stepped further into the apartment, closing the door behind him. The sound echoed like a final decision. "Who was the man bringing you the papers?" Her eyes flicked away. He caught it immediately. "Elena, it does matter," she said. "It ends now. It mattered the moment you involved my child," he replied. "If someone else knows she exists, that is a problem." Her head snapped up. "No one knows." Luca studied her. He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. But the world he ruled did, to allow blind faith. "You are not a good liar," he said quietly. She hated that he was right. "I did plan for Sophia to find out," Elena said after a moment. "I did plan for any of this. I just got tired of being afraid all the time." Luca's expression softened just a fraction. "You were afraid of me." "Yes," she said immediately. "Of what loving you would cost." He exhaled slowly. "I came back from hell, Elena. You disappeared while I was still learning how to walk again." Her voice broke. "I watched you almost die." Silence fell again, heavier this time, full of things that had never been said. Luca glanced toward the hallway. "Pack a bag." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "What? You and Sophia are coming with me," he said. "Tonight." "No," Elena said. "Absolutely not. This isn't a discussion." She stepped toward him, fire flashing in her eyes. "You don't get to make decisions for us. Not anymore." "I do when there's a threat," he said. "And there is." "You are the threat," she shot back. Something flickered in his gaze. "Regret, maybe guilt." "I know." The admission stunned her. "I won't hurt her," Luca said. "I swear it on my life." "That doesn't mean much in your world. It means everything in mine." From the hallway came a small voice. "Mama." They both turned. Sophia stood there again, eyes moving between them. "Are we in trouble?" Elena crossed the room and knelt in front of her daughter, smoothing her hair. "No, baby. We're just talking." Sophia looked at Luca. "Are you leaving again?" The question pierced him. He knelt too, bringing himself to her level. Not without you, he said. If you want me to stay. She considered this carefully, like a child who had learned too early that promises could break. Then she nodded once. Okay. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Luca rose. We leave in 20 minutes. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. She saw it then, not the Mafia boss, not the danger, but the father standing in front of her, terrified of losing his child twice. 20 minutes, she said quietly. That is all you get. Luca inclined his head, a rare gesture of respect. Neither of them noticed the dark car idling across the street, its engine still running, its headlights pointed straight at the apartment. Elena packed with shaking hands. She moved through the apartment on instinct, pulling clothes from drawers, folding Sophia's favorite sweater, tucking her rabbit into the top of the bag like a talisman. Her mind kept racing ahead, imagining locked gates, unfamiliar rooms, men with cold eyes. Luca's world. A world she had run from for 7 years. Behind her, Luca stood near the window, pretending to watch the street while actually watching her reflection in the glass. She looked thinner than he remembered. Stronger, too, in a way that came from surviving without a safety net. He felt a quiet, uncomfortable respect settle in his chest. Only essentials, he said. We won't be gone long. Elena did, to look at him. You don't get to decide that. He accepted the blow without comment. Sophia hovered in the doorway, backpack on, eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. Are we going on a trip? Luca crouched in front of her. Just for a little while. Like when you took me to the lake, she asked. His throat tightened. Yes, like that. Elena zipped the bag shut a little too hard. That was different. Luca met her gaze. Everything is different now. They left the apartment quietly, the hallway light flickering overhead. As Luca ushered them down the stairs, Elena noticed the car across the street for the first time. Dark windows, engine running, too still. She slowed. Luca. I see it, he said under his breath. He opened the SUV door and guided Sophia inside, fastening her seatbelt himself. Elena slid in beside her, heart hammering. Luca did get in right away. He scanned the street, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. The other car did, move. Luca got behind the wheel and pulled away smoothly, like nothing was wrong. In the side mirror, he watched the dark sedan fall in line behind them. Elena, he said calmly, I need you to stay very quiet. Her stomach dropped. Someone followed you. Someone followed us, he corrected. Sophia sensed the shift. She reached for Elena's hand. Ma? It's okay, Elena said, forcing a smile she didn't feel. Just look out the window, sweetheart. Luca took a series of turns through narrow streets, changing lanes without signaling, slipping into traffic with practiced ease. The sedan stayed with them. They know where we live, Elena whispered. Not anymore, Luca replied. He made a sudden turn into an underground parking garage and killed the headlights. The sedan overshot the entrance. Luca did wait. He parked, unbuckled, and turned to Elena. Stay here. Lock the doors. Before she could argue, he was out of the car. Minutes passed like hours. Sophia's breathing was shallow. Elena's mind filled with worst-case scenarios. She imagined Luca bleeding again, imagined explaining to her daughter why he was coming back this time. Then the garage door rattled open. Luca returned alone, jaw tight, coat dusted with rain. He slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. They want to follow us now, he said. Elena stared at him. What did you do? I reminded them who I am. She didn't ask more. She did to want the answer. They drove in silence for a long time, the city giving way to open road. Sophia eventually fell asleep, her head on Elena's shoulder. Luca watched them in the rearview mirror, something aching in his chest. They arrived at a secluded villa just before dawn. High walls. Soft lights. Security that didn't feel aggressive, just constant. Inside, a woman greeted them quietly and led Sophia to a bedroom already prepared. Luca watched until the door closed, then turned to Elena. She is safe here, he said. Safer than anywhere else. Elena crossed her arms, exhaustion finally seeping into her bones. For how long? For as long as it takes to fix what I broke. She laughed softly, without humor. You think this is fixable? I have to believe it is, he said. She looked at him then, really looked. The power, the guilt, the fear he tried so hard to hide. You came back from hell, she said quietly, but you brought it with you. Luca nodded. I know. From upstairs came a small sound, a door opening, a child, a sleepy voice calling his name. He did hesitate. This time, he went to her. Elena watched him go, torn between relief and dread, knowing that whatever came next would change all of their lives forever. Outside the villa walls, a phone buzzed in the dark, and a message was sent with 3 simple words. She has arrived. Luca sat on the edge of Sophia, as bed until her breathing evened out again. The room was small but warm, painted a pale yellow that caught the early morning light. A night lamp shaped like a moon glowed softly on the bedside table. Elena had chosen it years ago because Sophia had been afraid of the dark. Luca remembered that now, and the memory cut deeper than he expected. You're not leaving, right? Sophia murmured, half asleep. He brushed his thumb over her hair, slow and careful. Not tonight. She nodded, satisfied, and drifted back under. When Luca stepped out into the hallway, Elena was waiting. She leaned against the wall, arms folded tight across her chest, eyes rimmed red with exhaustion she hadn't allowed herself to feel yet. She's not used to strange places, Elena said quietly. Neither am I, Luca replied. They walked downstairs together. The villa was silent, except for the low hum of security systems and the faint sound of birds outside. Dawn was breaking. Luca poured himself a glass of water, drank it in one swallow, then leaned against the counter like the weight of the night had finally found him. You were angry, he said. Elena let out a short, humorless breath. That's an understatement. I deserve it. Yes, she said. You do. He waited. He had learned over the years that silence sometimes did more work than force. You don't get to sweep in and decide what happens to her, Elena continued. You don't get to be the solution to a problem you created. Luca nodded slowly. I'm not trying to be the hero. Then what are you doing? I am trying not to be the villain anymore. She studied him. You think one night changes that? No, he said honestly. I think one night shows me how much I've already lost. The words landed between them, raw and unguarded. Elena turned away, staring out the window at the garden beginning to glow in the early light. The man I met every week, she said. He worked for one of your lieutenants. He said the money was compensation that you owed me. Luca's jaw tightened. You should have told me. I didn't want your protection, she said. I wanted freedom. And you ended up stealing from me. She turned back to him. You built an empire on taking. Don't act surprised when it comes back to you. He accepted that too. Who else knows about Sophia? No one, Elena said firmly. Not her school. Not my friends. No one. What about him? Luca asked. She hesitated just a fraction of a second. That's enough, Luca said quietly. I'll handle it. I don't want blood on this, Elena snapped. Not for her. There won't be, he said. Not unless someone forces my hand. She searched his face for a lie and didn't find one. That scared her more than any threat. Later that morning, Sophia woke up smiling. She explored the villa like it was an adventure, dragging Elena along, asking questions about every painting and every locked door. Luca watched from a distance, his chest tight with something dangerously close to joy. At breakfast, Sophia climbed into the chair beside him without asking. You have a big house, she said. It's too big, he replied. I don't like it much, she frowned. Then why do you live here? He met her eyes. Because I forgot what mattered. Elena froze mid-sip. Sophia considered this, then reached for his hand again, small fingers curling around his. You remembered now, she said, like it was a fact. Luca swallowed. Yes. The phone rang just after noon. Luca stepped outside to answer it, his face going cold the moment he heard the voice on the other end. Elena watched from the doorway as his posture shifted, shoulders squaring, eyes hardening. She's under my protection now, Luca said into the phone. Touch them, and there will be consequences. He listened. His expression did change, but something dark moved behind his eyes. No, he said finally, you done get to negotiate. He ended the call and stood there for a long moment, staring at the horizon like he was measuring how much damage the truth might cause. Elena, he said, turning back to her. We can't stay here long. Her heart sank. Why? Because the lie you built is starting to crack, he said. And when it does, it won't just be me who feels it. Upstairs, Sophia laughed at something one of the housekeepers said, the sound light and untroubled. Elena pressed her hand to her chest, suddenly afraid that happiness, real happiness, might be the most dangerous thing of all. She did, to yet know that the next choice she made would decide whether Luca Moretti became a father, or a ghost in his daughter's life forever. They left the villa that evening, just before the sky bruised into purple. Elena insisted Sophia wear her red jacket, the one with the crooked zipper she refused to replace, and Luca did, to argue. He watched from the doorway as Elena knelt to button it up, her fingers moving with the muscle memory of years. It struck him then how much of Sophia's life he had missed. Not milestones, not birthdays. The quiet rituals, the ordinary moments that built a child's sense of safety. The car ride was tense but quiet. Luca drove this time, not trusting anyone else. Elena sat in the back with Sophia, pointing out lights, answering questions, keeping her calm. Luca listened without turning around, memorizing the rhythm of their voices. They arrived at a smaller property hour away, no high walls, no obvious guards. Just a modest house tucked between olive trees, the kind of place no one would look twice at. That was the point. Inside, it smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood, a place meant to disappear into. This is temporary, Luca said, setting Sophia's bag down. A few days. Elena did respond. She was already scanning the exits, the windows, the locks. Survival had made her efficient. Sophia wandered into the living room and stopped short. On the low shelf beneath the television sat a framed photo. It was old, faded around the edges. That's me, she said slowly. Luca's chest tightened. Yes. And Mama, Sophia added. Then she tilted her head. When was that? Elena stiffened. Before you were born, Luca said carefully. Sophia looked between them. Why didn't you stay? The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Luca knelt. Because I was hurt. And because I didn't know how to be good. Sophia considered this. Are you good now? He hesitated. I'm trying. She nodded, satisfied in the way only children could be, and wandered off to explore. Elena followed Luca into the kitchen. You shouldn't have shown her that. She deserves the truth, he said, or as much of it as she can understand. She deserves stability, Elena snapped. Not half answers and disappearances. I'm not disappearing, he said quietly. She laughed, sharp and tired. You don't know that. That night, Sophia had trouble sleeping. She called for Elena twice. Luca heard it all from the guest room down the hall. On the third time, Elena didn't answer. Luca sat up. By the time he reached Sophia's room, Elena was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed, rubbing her daughter's back. Her shoulders were slumped, exhaustion finally winning. She won't settle, Elena whispered. Luca stepped closer. May I? Elena hesitated, then nodded once. Luca sat on the other side of the bed. He didn't touch Sophia at first. He just spoke. When I was little, he said softly, I used to count things when I was scared. The tiles on the ceiling, the cars passing outside. It helped me remember that time keeps moving. Sophia peeked at him. Did it work? Sometimes, he said. Wanna try? She nodded. They counted together. Breaths. Seconds. The distant bark of a dog. Elena watched, something tightening in her chest she did have a name for. When Sophia finally slept, Elena stayed seated, staring at the wall. You did have to do that, she said. Yes, Luca replied. I did. They stood in the hallway after the house quiet again. I can't do this forever, Elena said suddenly. Living like we are hiding. I know, Luca said. Neither can I. She met his eyes. Then what's your plan? He was silent for a long moment. To dismantle what threatens her, even if it costs me everything else. That is not a plan, Alina said. That is a sacrifice. He did deny it. The next morning Luca left early. He kissed Sofia's forehead before she woke, a gesture so gentle it almost hurt. Alina watched from the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. Don't make promises you can't keep, she said. I won't, he replied. I'll make choices. By noon the news reached him. The lieutenant, the one who'd been feeding Alina money, he'd been arrested. Not quietly, publicly. And in his panic he'd started talking. Luca stood in a shadowed office, phone pressed to his ear, the city buzzing beyond the windows. Names, the voice on the other end said. Addresses. Family. Luca closed his eyes. At the safe house, Alina felt it before she knew it. The wrong kind of silence. Sofia sat at the table coloring when a car slowed outside. Then another. Alina's pulse spiked. She moved to the window just as a familiar dark sedan pulled to the curb. Her phone buzzed. A single message lit the screen. We need to talk. Now. Outside, a man stepped out of the car and looked up at the house at the window, like he already knew who was watching. Alina backed away slowly, her heart pounding, realizing that Luca's world had finally caught up to them. And this time, it hadn't come for him, it had come for her. Alina did answer the message. She slid the phone face down on the counter and forced her breathing to slow. Panic would help. Panic never helped. She crossed the room quietly and knelt in front of Sofia, who was still coloring, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Sweetheart, Alina said softly, why don't you go wash your hands? We'll have lunch soon. Sofia looked up. But I'm not done. I know, Alina said, brushing her hair back. Just for a minute. Sofia nodded and padded down the hall. The moment she was out of sight, Alina moved fast. She locked the back door, checked the windows. The house was never meant to be a fortress. That had been Luca's idea of safety. This was just a pause between storms. A knock sounded at the front door. Not loud, not threatening. Alina closed her eyes for half a second, then opened the door. The man standing there was not who she expected. He was older, silver-haired at the temples, dressed neatly but without flash, no visible weapon. His eyes were sharp, calculating and far too calm. Elena Rossi, he said. My name is Marco Vitale. Her stomach dropped. She knew that name. Everyone did. Marco Vitale did raise his voice. He did dirty his hands. He was the kind of man who survived because others disappeared for him. You shouldn't be here, Alina said. He smiled faintly. Neither should your daughter. Her breath caught. You leave her out of this. That depends, Marco said, glancing past her shoulder into the house. May I come in? He did move. Luca Moretti has made things inconvenient. He's forcing changes that unsettle a lot of people. I am not part of his world, Alina said. Marco's gaze sharpened. You are now. You always were. Sofia's voice drifted from the hallway. Ma? Alina's heart slammed. Go back to the bathroom, she called, forcing calm. I'll be there. Marco raised a hand. Relax. I am not here to scare children. Then why are you here? Because Luca loves leverage, Marco said, and you are his. Alina felt something cold settle in her chest. You were wrong. I don't think so, he replied. He came back from the dead for you. Men like Luca don't do that. Lightly. Alina stared at him. What do you want? To talk to him, Marco said. Without posturing, without arrests and noise, you will call him. You will tell him where you are, and he will come alone. No, she said immediately. Marco sighed, almost regretful. Then I wait. For what? For him to realize that his attempt at being a father is putting his daughter in danger. Alina's phone vibrated again on the counter. Unknown number. She did. Need to look to know who it was. Marco smiled. He's very responsive when it comes to you. Her hands shook as she picked up the phone and stepped away, her voice low. Luca. Elena. Luca said, tension threaded through every syllable. Are you safe? No, she said honestly. They found us. A pause. Then cold control sliding into place. Who? Marco Vitale, she said. He is here. The silence on the line deepened, darkened. Put him on, Luca said. Marco shook his head. This is between you and me. Elena swallowed. He wants you to come, alone. Luca's voice dropped. Tell him no. He said he'll wait, she whispered. And Luca, he mentioned Sofia. The word changed everything. I am coming, Luca said immediately. No. Elena said, panic flaring. That is what he wants. I don't care, Luca replied. I want to negotiate my daughter's safety. You will get yourself killed, she said. Maybe, he said softly, but not before I make sure she lives. The call ended. Elena stared at the phone like it might explode. Marco watched her carefully. He is coming. Yes, Elena said, and if anything happens to my daughter. You'll hate me, Marco finished. I am aware. Sofia appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. Mama, who was that? Elena knelt and pulled her close. Just someone lost, baby. Marco watched the embrace, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. An hour later, a car pulled up the drive. Elena felt it in her bones before she saw it. Luca stepped out alone. No guards, no weapons in sight. Just him, walking toward the house like a man who had already decided what he was willing to lose. Elena's chest tightened painfully. When Luca entered, his eyes went straight to Sofia. He crossed the room, knelt, and kissed her forehead. I need you to listen to Mama today, he said softly. Be very brave for me. Sofia nodded, sensing the weight beneath the words. Are you in trouble? He smiled gently. Not if you are safe. Marco cleared his throat. We should talk. Luca stood slowly and turned to face him. The air between them went taut, like a wire pulled too tight. Outside the day was painfully ordinary. Birds, wind in the trees. A world unaware that inside that small house, a man was about to choose between power and love, and that no matter what he chose, nothing would ever be the same again. Luca did sit when Marco gestured toward the table. He stayed standing, hands loose at his sides, posture relaxed in a way that was never accidental. Elena noticed it immediately. This was the Luca she remembered from before, the one who scared people without raising his voice. Sofia, Elena said softly, go to your room, sweetheart. Sofia looked from Luca to Marco, then back to her mother. You promised lunch. I know, Elena said, forcing a smile. We'll eat soon. Sofia hesitated, then walked away slowly, glancing back once before disappearing down the hall. The click of her bedroom door closing sounded far too final. Marco waited a beat. She's beautiful, he said. She looks like you. Luca, his eyes hardened. Speak carefully. Marco held up his hands. I did come to provoke you. I came to restore balance. By threatening a child? Luca asked quietly. I never threatened her, Marco replied. I implied consequences. There's a difference. Elena felt sick. You destabilized things, Marco continued, turning his attention fully to Luca. You forced arrests. You drew attention. We had an understanding. You were stealing from me, Luca said. I was redistributing, Marco corrected. Quietly. Efficiently. Without blood. And you involved my family. Marco tilted his head. You involved them the moment you let them exist. The words landed hard. Elena stepped forward. This ends now. You leave. You forget we exist. Marco looked at her with something like pity. That's not how this world works. No, Luca said. But this is. He reached into his coat slowly and set his phone on the table. He slid it across to Marco. What is this? Marco asked. Insurance, Luca said. Recordings, transfers, names, enough to dismantle everything you've built. Marco's expression finally shifted. You burn the house down with yourself inside it? Yes, Luca said, if it means my daughter sleeps without fear. Elena's breath caught. Marco studied Luca for a long moment. Two old predators measuring each other, not with violence, but with restraint. And what do you want? Marco asked. You disappear, Luca said. From her life, from their lives, you cut every thread that leads back to them. And in return, Luca's jaw tightened. I walk away. No more arrests. No more noise. Marco leaned back, fingers tapping once against the table. You are asking me to trust you. Luca met his gaze. I am asking you to fear me. Silence stretched. Finally Marco stood. You've grown sentimental. Yes, Luca said, and it's made me dangerous. Marco smiled faintly. Very well. Elena's heart pounded. That is it? For now, Marco said. He looked at Luca. But understand this. You can't have both worlds. Sooner or later, you will have to choose which one dies. He turned toward the door, then paused. Protect her well, he said quietly. This world eats the things we love. Then he was gone. The house felt hollow after the door closed. Elena's legs gave out, and she sank into a chair, her hands shaking violently now that she no longer had to hold it together. Luca crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt in front of her. It is over, he said. For how long? She whispered. He didn't answer. He couldn't lie to her. Sophia's door creaked open. She peeked out. Is he gone? Yes, Luca said gently. He won't come back. She padded into the room and climbed straight into Elena's lap, wrapping her arms around her neck. Elena held her tightly, pressing her face into her daughter's hair, breathing her in like air after drowning. Sophia looked at Luca over Elena's shoulder. Are you staying now? The question shattered what little composure he had left. He swallowed. If your mama lets me. Elena looked up at him then. Really looked. She saw the cost in his eyes, the sacrifices already made. The one still coming. I don't want this life for her, she said. Neither do I, Luca replied. That's why I'm leaving it. She stared at him. You can't just walk away. I can dismantle myself, he said. Piece by piece. That world won't forgive you. I don't need forgiveness, he said. I need her. The words hung in the air, bare and unguarded. That night, after Sophia finally fell asleep between them on the couch, Elena lay awake listening to Luca breathe. She wondered how many men like him ever truly changed. How many promises like this survive daylight. At dawn, Luca got up quietly. Elena watched him dress, heart sinking. Where are you going? She asked. To end it, he said, for good. Fear wrapped around her chest. And if you don't come back. He paused, then turned to her. Then tell her I tried. He leaned down and kissed Sophia's forehead one last time. Elena watched him walk out the door, knowing that by nightfall she would either lose the man she loved all over again, or finally see Luca Moretti return as just a father. The streets were empty as Luca drove, the city's lights blurred by rain and the memory of every wrong he'd ever committed. He didn't think about his men or his empire or the grudges piled up like corpses in the back alleys of the world he ruled. Tonight none of that mattered. Only Elena and Sophia. Only what he had to fix. He arrived at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, its skeletal beams cutting through the fog like broken teeth. Luca stepped out of the car, leather gloves tight against his hands. Marco Vitali was nowhere in sight. The lieutenants who had whispered threats and carried grudges now stayed back, shadows in the corners. Luca did flinch. He had faced death countless times. Tonight death could wait. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. Light spilled through the broken windows, slicing the shadows in jagged stripes. Luca's steps echoed on the concrete floor. Then he heard it, a soft voice, deliberate, calm. You came, Marco said, emerging from behind a stack of crates. Did you doubt I would? Luca replied. His voice was steady, but the tension coiled in his shoulders like a spring ready to snap. Marco's gaze swept over him, sharp and calculating. I wondered how much you de-risk. Everything, Luca said simply. Because she's worth it, Marco steadied him. Do you even know what that means? I do, Luca replied. It means that for once, my choice isn't about power. It's about love. Marco chuckled softly, the sound hollow in the warehouse. Love won, save you from the world you've built. I'm not asking it to, Luca said. He stepped forward, voice hardening. I am asking it to remind me what matters. You want leverage? Here it is. I choose my daughter and I choose her mother. Not your empire, not your rules, not you. Marco's expression did falter, but his eyes narrowed. Bold words, brave words. Do you have the spine to live them? Luca did flinch. I don't just have the spine. He said quietly, I have the reason. He pressed a button on his phone. A recording played over the warehouse. Speakers transfers, confessions. Evidence of every betrayal Marco had orchestrated. Luca's meticulous preparation unfolded like a trap closing. The lieutenants had hidden cameras, emails, encrypted messages, all of it exposed. Marco's jaw tightened. You'd burn everything down? Luca met his gaze. I'd burn everything down if it meant she sleeps safely tonight. For a long moment, Marco's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile, or was it a sneer? Very well, you win. For now. Luca didn't wait for negotiation. He turned, walked to the car, and drove back toward the villa, rain washing the world in gray streaks. Every red light, every reflective puddle reminded him of the years lost. But tonight, there was clarity. Tonight, he was coming home. When he arrived, Elena was on the porch, arms crossed, the tension in her posture screaming the hours he had been gone. She didn't speak at first, letting him step closer. Sophia ran toward him, unhesitant, trust absolute in her childlike way. Luca caught her in his arms, and for the first time in years, the world outside the villa didn't exist. Papa? Sophia cried. I'm here, Luca said, voice catching. He held her tight, feeling the warmth that had been missing from his life. Elena stepped closer, the weight of unspoken words heavy between them. You didn't get yourself killed? Not yet, he replied, allowing a faint smile. And I don't intend to. They stood together, an unspoken truce forming in the quiet of the evening. Luca held Sophia, Elena beside him, the chaos of his past and the danger of his world unable to pierce the small sanctuary they had built. I want normal for her, Elena said softly. I'll give her that, Luca said. I promise. Whatever it takes. Sophia yawned, tired from the day's upheaval. Luca kissed her forehead again. Sleep, Piccola. Papa's here. Elena watched them, the knot of fear and resentment in her chest, loosening just enough to let hope slip in. Then maybe, she whispered, there's a chance for us too. And for the first time in years, Luca allowed himself to believe it. The world beyond the villa walls still raged, still plotted, still waited, but inside, in that fragile, quiet moment, they had won something no bullet, no betrayal, no empire could touch, a family. Tomorrow they would face everything. But tonight, Luca Moretti was just a father, holding his daughter close, and nothing else mattered. Sophia stirred in his arms, whispering, I love you, Papa. I love you too, he replied, and for the first time the words were more than a promise, they were a beginning. The villa was silent, save for the soft breathing of two people finally home, and Luca knew, no matter what came next, he would never let them go again. Outside, the city continued to breathe, oblivious to the quiet redemption unfolding behind those walls. Elena squeezed his hand. We start over tomorrow, she said. Yes, Luca said, looking at Sophia, asleep now, cheeks rosy in the lamplight. Tomorrow we start over. It was a beginning forged from fear, love, and regret, but a beginning nonetheless. And this time, he would fight to keep it. The sun rose over the villa like a promise, soft, gold, and impossible to ignore. Sophia stirred first, blinking sleep from her eyes. She ran into the living room, where Luca and Elena sat side by side, quiet but alert. The previous night's tension had left marks, dark circles under Elena's eyes, a stiffness in Luca's shoulders, the lingering taste of fear. But none of that mattered now. Today was about them. Good morning, Piccola, Luca said gently. Sophia bounced into his lap, giggling. Did Papa fight the bad man? Luca's lips curved into a faint smile. Yes. And he's not coming back. Elena watched them, her chest lightening with a mix of relief and awe. She had feared the world would always keep them apart, would always demand sacrifice and secrecy. But this morning, with Sofia laughing and safe, with Luca present and unyielding, she dared to hope. Breakfast was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after storm clouds have broken, but before the world has fully realized the sun has returned. They ate eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. Luca sat across from Elena, glancing at her over the rim of his coffee cup, not saying much. The conversation didn't need words. Afterward, they walked through the garden. Luca held Sofia's hand in one, and Elena's in the other. Birds chirped in the olive trees, the scent of wet earth rising from the grass. The villa, modest in its elegance, finally felt like home. "You have a lot to answer for," Elena said suddenly, her voice playful now, though still tinged with warning. "I know," Luca said, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Elena looked at him, searching the man before her, the Mafia boss, the feared name, the man who had controlled empires, taken lives. And yet here he was, vulnerable in the way only a father could be. "Do you even know how to be a dad?" she asked. He chuckled softly, the sound low and warm. "I am learning." Sofia tugged on his sleeve. "Teach me to ride a bike today, Papa." Luca nodded. Of course. As they walked back toward the house, Elena allowed herself to imagine a life she hadn't dared to before. A life where fear didn't dictate every decision, where her daughter could grow up surrounded by love rather than shadows, and where Luca could be more than the legend she had feared. He could simply be a man who loved them fiercely. The days that followed were quiet but not empty. Luca worked behind the scenes, dismantling threats, severing dangerous ties, and carefully ensuring that no one could ever reach Sofia. Elena, for the first time, allowed herself to rest, trusting that this man, dangerous, flawed, and broken in ways only she could see, was fully devoted to their daughter. One evening, as the sky turned violet and the first stars appeared, Luca and Elena sat on the porch, Sofia asleep in her bedroom. Luca's hand found hers naturally. "You think it's really over?" Elena asked softly. "For now," Luca said. "But if it isn't, I promise you, nothing will touch her. Nothing will touch us." "Not again." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret—" "What?" he asked. "Coming back," she said. His jaw tightened slightly, then relaxed. "Not for a second. Because without it I'd have lost her, and I can't lose her. Not again." Elena did respond with words. She just held his hand tighter. They didn't need words. Sofia's laughter from the next room, the quiet hum of the villa, the safety of their small sanctuary, these were their proof. Later that night, Luca stood at the window, looking out at the city lights far in the distance. He thought of empires and enemies, of power and money, of all the lives he had ruled over with fear. But here, in this quiet villa with Elena and Sofia, he realized something far more dangerous and far more precious awaited him: love, responsibility, redemption. He turned and saw Elena asleep on the couch, Sofia nestled against her. He knelt beside them, brushing Sofia's hair from her forehead and holding them both close. "I am here," he whispered, "and I am not leaving, ever again." The world outside could wait. The past could wait. For the first time, the future belonged entirely to them. And as the moonlight spilled across the room, 3 hearts beat together, fragile, imperfect, and finally unbroken. Sofia stirred in her sleep, murmuring, "I love you, Papa." "I love you too, Piccola," Luca said, holding both mother and daughter close. "Always." Elena, half asleep, murmured against his chest, "We start over, together." "Yes," Luca replied. "Together." And for the first time in years, it was true. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to follow more cinematic Mafia love stories that will tug at your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat.